on the floor. We need a back. And I'm glad we're going to put the tree of life over on the side there so people know it. And then we're going to put.
Good afternoon, shalom. Welcome to Temple Sinai. And we're so glad to have all of you here today in person and streaming. And I know Barbara's family is in person and streaming, so we want to make sure to welcome them also. And in case you don't know it, you're here for Who Knew? Okay, Myra's doing all the hellos.
The dog.
Yeah, 3 dogs.
Welcome to Who Knew? And we are an exploration of the Jewish experience. Many of you have been with us since September. Our program is sponsored by Jewish Nevada, and I want to thank our board of directors for their support here at Temple Sinai as well, and to anybody who has on their own decided to help support this program. So today, our Rabbi Ben Zober will be speaking with Barbara Weinberg. And just a quick little something. In 2015, I joined Temple Sinai. I really didn't know a lot of people. And one day...
They put you to work. You show up.
That's right. But I happened to decide I should learn about the Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and they had a bus tour. And the bus was picking us up at the Discovery Museum. And I go over there, and I'm just kind of sitting on the side, waiting to load the bus. And this woman comes over to me. And she says, "You were at Temple Sinai the other night." And I go, "Yes." And she said, "Well, hi, I'm Barbara Weinberg. Would you like to sit together on the bus?" And that's how I first met Barbara. And we spent the day together learning about the Water Authority.
Right.
And more importantly, I learned about Barbara. And after that, anytime you needed a volunteer, it was Barbara. Social action, it was Barbara. Library committee, it was Barbara. You need this, it was Barbara. And I'm just so honored and proud to be a friend of hers. And I'm so excited to hear so much more that she's going to tell us today. And for many of you who know her for so many years, I hope you walk away learning something else that's new. So I'm going to turn it over, and just know at the end of our program, we'll have some light refreshments in the lobby. So Rabbi Ben Zober and Barbara Weinberg, they met at Sinai.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you all for coming, and Barbara, thank you for being in the hot seat there. So, we've learned how you met Jill. Let's take a couple steps back from that. What first brought you to Sinai?
I will start with what brought me to Nevada. I was on the National Board of the American Association of University Women, AUW. And I had been invited to Reno for their annual convention to talk about national legislation. And this was the early 70s, where there was lots of women activity going on nationally. Anyway, I was invited up here and met some of the very public figures, elected officials and whatever, women in the state of Nevada. And then I went home, and my husband said to me, "Oh, we're moving to Reno." Our business involved warehousing, and if you are aware of Nevada laws, this is definitely the place to warehouse. And we needed a larger warehouse, and lo and behold, 2 bankers from Reno had discovered my husband was looking for a larger warehouse, and made it very easy for us to move up here. So that brought me to Reno in 1974. My husband and I and our 3 children, one of whom is here today. He was a freshman in high school, and the 2 girls were in middle school. And they are listening currently. Hello, Julie in Seaside, Oregon. Hello, Karen in Netanya, Israel. and that brought us up to Reno. And initially we joined Temple Emmanuel because when you move to a new city, you join the congregation that has a rabbi. So we joined Temple Emmanuel, and I'm being very rude, but the rabbi there at that time looked just like Colonel Sanders. Anyway, nevertheless, huh?
Was the chicken as good?
Definitely. Anyway, the two girls went into the religious school there, and Julie was asked to write some kind of whatever, and she referred to God as she, and the rabbi got very upset, and I decided that was definitely not the place for us. So we moved up to Temple Sinai, and it has been a wonderful, what we decide, 47 years at Temple Sinai. We didn't have a rabbi at that time, but we got along, I have to say, very easily with the us of us.
Wonderful. Well, a risk of saying, their loss is our gain. Certainly, we have benefited so much from your connection, and I would be remiss if I didn't follow up on that you mentioned your husband Harry, and I know that we are surrounded by some of his contributions to this space, and I wonder. I know that we set up the shot specifically so we can see some of the things that he did, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that project of bringing all of this gorgeous artwork into this space. And I also know that you had a personal part on that as well. So if you could, how did, I guess first question, how did that come about? Did he have a background or a passion for woodworking and it was just a natural fit, or was it just something, hey, I'd like to try this out?
No, that's a good way, Myra. He had a passion for woodworking, and Myra was his good friend, and he retired and took up woodworking as his hobby. At one point, he started out woodworking in the garage, and at one point, when we lived on Southridge, we built a whole wood shop. Had built a whole wood shop where he could do his woodworking. And my part of it, I will have to say, is when his friends came over to talk to him, talked too long, he just turned on his machinery and they'd come in the house and they talk to me. But among the many pleasures of Harry's woodworking, in addition to all that we have here, Harry made toys for many of my friends when they were having their grandchildren. And when I go to their houses, it's now their great-grandchildren that are playing with all the children's toys that he made for so many of my friends. And he loved it. And he was Myra's good friend. And I think that's quite how all of this started. I think the first piece was the Bima. And
we'll try to for those who are watching online, try to move the camera a little bit and avoid getting everyone nauseous as we move around the room.
And then he and Myra had quite a conversation about the opening for the doors of the ark. And Myra told him to do those two letters, which I think translate to witness.
Yeah, aid for witness. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and then and even more. We've got behind you. There's I guess this now sort of a cupboard, but it was the original ark, and we've taken some of the figures there are depicting the carrying of the Ark of the Covenant, which originally, if I understand correctly, was they were the front doors, which are now in the back. You won't be able to see that if you're online, so you're just going to have to come in person to see these things yourself. But we've also got the podium for the candlesticks and the candlestick holder as well. So all of those things.
And he loved woodworking, and the temple got the benefit of it.
Yeah,
as did many of my friends.
Now, were you? They talk about golf widows. Were you a woodshop widow at times, or it just?
Oh no, I had a whole other life.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and again, and there was you you didn't let him hog all the work. You did contribute as well to
Oh,
something
yes.
that many of us have benefited from quite personally, and that is the chairs. Correct? You're the one who upholstered the
my
chairs.
contribution. I upholstered those chairs.
Yes. So, at the risk of being inappropriate, my tochas thanks you. And I'm sure everyone who has been a Bima guest and who has sat in those also appreciates that work that you did.
Yeah, and he made such straight backs because he didn't quite realize chairs generally have a little lean back.
Well, I will say that I think it does keep some people from falling asleep while they're sitting up there for a long time, which is probably helpful. It's hard not to get a little offended when people nod off during your sermon. So.
Oh, well, Harry used to do that to Myra.
A lot of people.
Rabbi Alan S. Green said we do some of our best sleeping in synagogue. So if that's, would that we all feel so comfortable in that space where we can catch a few Z's.
Yeah.
So, but certainly this space has a feel and it has a welcome that is because it was done by loving hands and members of this community, and that is something that we absolutely you can't put a price on. And there are places that spend tens of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and it doesn't have that little bit of the soul of the people who inhabit it. So thank you to you and to Harry for that.
And I think that's the reputation of our synagogue, that it's a warm, friendly, comfortable, safe place to be.
Thank you. Yeah. So you've been here for quite a while. I maybe one of our longest tenured members.
Actually, Steve and Marty Matlis joined the synagogue before Harry and I came. I think that's all who's left at this point.
I mean, I think Robert Dickens he was sort of born into it.
Isn't that interesting? I never think of the Dickens family who are among the absolute founders.
What was sort of the feel or the vibe of the community when you first came in?
It was very much together. We didn't have a rabbi yet, so we were doing everything. So there was a great deal of comfort about what was going on and determination to make certain that the synagogue was a successful place, and turned out to work out.
I think so. Yeah, we've had and I'm happy to say we've had a number of rabbis who've come through, and
Right.
I won't ask which one's your favorite. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Rabbi Myra, you are everyone's favorite rabbi. That is just fair. But certainly. But in addition to those sorts of things, you've had a number of roles here. I know you were Temple president at one point, and what other hats have you worn in this space?
Well, I don't know. Any of you have been here long enough. We used to phone everybody, wish them a happy birthday on their birthday. You must remember that, Patty. Don't? Anyway, your memory's like mine, 7.5 minutes. That was one of the lovely things that we don't do anymore, but they're just functioning committees. I was on the social action committee. I was on library committee, worked myself up to president.
He also is the only person whose name is not Robert Dickens to head a rabbinic search committee.
Oh, okay. The only non-Robert
Right.
Dickens head of search committees. Okay,
Right.
well, that is a distinction that I think is probably certainly unique to our community, and
That's because I think when you figure the synagogue's been in existence, I've been here 47 years and it's longer than that.
Yeah.
But we've really had a small number of rabbis over that long period of time.
it is hard to cycle through rabbis when they won't leave. But I have to say that it is also part of the community, that people tend to stick around in places where they are felt to me, they feel welcome, where they feel like there is a good
Right.
community, and you know, that comes from the people more than anything. So
I think that's the mood around here. Welcoming, involving.
certainly. I'm trying to think while I have you, of any, you know, deep dark secrets of the temple history that we can plumb the depths for. But I wanted to turn our attentions a little bit to some of the other things that in your life. Maybe we wildly out of sequence, but where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Portland, Oregon. And I had a very happy growing up life. My household was, one sister was 2 years older than I am, regretfully passed away when she was much too young. My other sister was 12 years younger, and she and I are very good friends, comforting each other, as is the synagogue, because her husband just passed away last month. Just a happy, comforting household. My mother was very active politically, Democratic Party. She even went to Kennedy's inaugural ball with Senator Wayne Morris as his guest. So that was going on in our household. My mother was Hadassah active. My mother was Red Cross active. She was a nurse and was the head of the Red Cross Blood Center volunteers. So I had all that going on around me. My father was a busy businessman and played handball. And his Sunday requirements were to take my sister and I to religious school, Temple Beth Israel in Portland, Oregon. If you ever go to Portland, Oregon, it is an absolutely gorgeous facility. It was built in the late 1800s, large Reform congregation in Portland. And anyway, take us to religious school. He'd go play handball. Then he picked us up and we'd go to the delicatessen. And that was the Sunday activity, that you went to religious school, then you went to the delicatessen to buy your bagels.
That sounds great. Yeah.
And anyway, that was, I was fortunate. I was really fortunate that my family life was just really easy. Mother was active, father was busy, and it was a good, nice life to grow up with. And my sister, my father had been born and grown up in Oakland, California. And so when college came along, my sister went off to Berkeley and I followed my sister to Berkeley. And that was just, and I still, family is very, very important to me. And my family still gets together all the time. My family in Portland, my mother's side of the family, we get together. My father's side of the family from the Bay Area. We are having this year's Seder in Seaside, Oregon. There will be about 35 of us there. And we've been doing this Seder together since 1974, when Harry and I and family moved to Reno. My brother and family moved, he was at the Pentagon, my brother-in-law moved to the Bay Area, and we started having our Seders together 1974.
Wow.
And continue.
That's quite a run. So how'd you meet Harry?
How did I meet Harry?
Yeah.
Well, I went to Berkeley, and he and I started freshman year together. He grew up in Oakland, California. And my cousin said to me, they were in ZBT, Zeta Beta Tau fraternity, if any of you were college fraternity. Anyway, ZBT was having a annual dance or something. And he said, I have this friend, he is Jewish, but he's never married, never dated anybody who is Jewish. And I'll fix you up with him, but don't fall for him. Well, tell somebody that. So Harry and I got together at that particular dance and together ever since.
Oh, that's lovely. So what was she trying to warn you about? Why did she say don't fall for him?
Because he never dated a Jewish
Oh,
girl,
I see.
and you would be the first one, and nothing will come of it, Anyway, Harry and I didn't quite get that message. And then with Harry's life and mine, healthy I'd been, and then I was going to be a physical therapist, and I started, it would have been my senior year from Berkeley, but you moved to San Francisco to the medical school in order to become a physical therapist. And when you are having school at a hospital, they do a TB test on your arm, and guess what they found? So I could not continue in school. I went to bed for my mild case of tuberculosis. And Harry was in the military at that point, and he was stationed out on Anahuac, where they were doing the atomic bomb testing on Bikini. And so he's off on this island with only men. And what do you think they did there? All the men, soldiers who had never had a bris, a circumcision, were having circumcisions because you could run around naked for a couple of weeks until you healed.
Okay, well,
Anyway, nevertheless, so I went to bed and he went to Anahuac, and we were engaged. And then he came back home, and about a week later we got married.
wow.
1955.
And the rest they say is history.
The rest is history.
But your story continues with all sorts of things. So a little bit of mention we'd had of some of your activism and all that, and I could see some of, I'm guessing some of that comes from your mother's influence and all of that. Was it sort of a natural progression? You flowed into it, or is it something you said, I don't want to, Mom was doing all those things, I'm gonna do something else, and then just you end up there anyway?
I think she was my, she encouraged that, and I found that it had been a really important part of her life, doing for the community, and I decided I would do that too, and I just kind of fell into it. And then the timing was, I would say, was just right, because in the early 70s, it was the women's movement. And women were getting very, very active, and men were getting very upset, I will say. And it was just an enticing, interesting, involving thing to do. And the other piece of it was, and this very much contributed, middle-class women at that point tended not to work. So there were many, many women, I'll put a large middle class, larger than we have now, because now we're going from up, losing our middle class regretfully. But it was just, I will say it was a national progression into all those activities. Well, I guess I was active legislative because I was national legislative chair for the American Association of Women, University Women, which clearly was onto women's issues. But I moved up here just as the equal rights was on the agenda. And I was the northern chair for Nevadans for ERA. And we worked very, very actively to try to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. And we did succeed in the state of Nevada, but we did not, regretfully, quite succeed nationwide. So, but the women's movement, Title IX, all kinds of things were going on. I go back to when I got married, I couldn't even have a bank account in my own name. There were ridiculous kinds of restrictions. Women were to be wives and mothers. That was it. And I was not willing to just be a wife and mother. So I got politically very active, which led to all kinds of things.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you did get active. I wonder if you could tell us about some of the activities that you did and some of the projects.
Well, being, I keep thinking in my life, I was really fortunate in a peculiar kind of way that actively, nationally, it was AAUW, and I was on the national board, which met in Washington, D.C., though there was much activity. But when I worked for the state of Nevada, and I was the director of the state job training office. And the state job training office, which is now a part of, the state's agencies, DETR, Department of Employment Training and Rehab. Anyway, so all the money that I had to spend was federal money that came in for job training programs to educate the unemployed and to help people get employed. So I was very active on the federal level with that. Secretary of State, Elizabeth Dole, met her, worked with her a little bit. I mean, I just had I was fortunate to have fabulous contacts.
Mhm.
And I took advantage and
Good.
I enjoyed every minute and worked even harder. So both with AAUW on the federal level, I was in Washington, D.C., met George Bush, can't remember what other presidents, and then in my own job, it was Elizabeth Dole. It was what was going on in the Department of Labor. I have been very fortunate, I will have to say. My husband died much too young, but in general, my life, I have been very fortunate and had very interesting activities because I got to go to Washington, D.C., involve myself in that. When I told you a bit
Yes,
about
please.
another related, as the legislative chair I'll put it this way. There was a National Women's Conference in, I think it was 1970. I lose track of time. It was in Houston, and there were thousands of women there. And I was a delegate from AAUW, and Gloria Steinem was there. Oh, I'm forgetting all the names of the women that were. Bella Obzug was there. I mean, all of these women that were involved top level. And other than being a delegate, my contribution was riding in the taxi cab to the airport with Gloria Steinem, who was the founder of Now, Ms. Magazine. I mean, she is a very significant person in the history of the women's issues in the United States and women's place in the United States.
Now, did you happen to just hail the cab together, or just say, "Hey, Gloria, I'm headed to the airport. Would you like to split a cab?"
She said, "Hi, Barbara." No, we were just, I think there was a bellhop who probably found a taxi for the two of us because he knew that both of us were going to the airport at the same time. But that women's conference in Houston, I think 3,000 women were there, and it really elevated legislative issues to improve the position of women.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of those battles that you fought for everyone all that time ago seem to be
Back again. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I at the risk of asking from someone who's already given so much, do you have any advice or words of wisdom or insights as to how maybe we finally resolve this and don't have to look back?
Well, I'm not certain it's altogether resolvable because it keeps cropping up. But I think it's really important now that so many women work that we make certain that wages are on an equal level, which they are not, and that women seem to be able to rise in positions but boards of directors are still heavily male. And I must say, women bring a different perspective. Nevada's, I think, one of very few states. The bulk of our legislature in Nevada is female. So we have some good things going on in Nevada, recognition of women. But we need to, it's like anything you want strongly, you need to work for it. You can't sit back and say everybody else is going to do it for me. You have to raise your voice. So I encourage all of you, if you haven't already, raise your voice.
Absolutely. Let's see. So I know that so many other things, but I understand you had you did work with the Nevada Museum of Art. Is that
No,
correct?
historical.
Society. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is why I should take notes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
I hope all of you have visited the Nevada Historical Society. It's on the UNR campus, except I'm telling you to visit it, and it's being totally remodeled and is closed until early 2026. But it was the first state museum in the state and has an unbelievable collection of Nevada historical manuscripts, photographs, newspapers, an amazing amount of Nevada history is there. Nevada history is also at the University of Nevada Library. So we have two really good resources in our state for Nevada history. But among the many things I did in my career, since I couldn't be a physical therapist because I had to go to bed with tuberculosis, but I could become a teacher. So I went back to Berkeley. Well, Harry was out of the military then, and he and I both went back to Berkeley, and I studied to be a teacher. And actually, I did teach for all of 3 years because I was again in the kind of the milieu where middle-class women didn't work, and my husband was a CPA; he could do the work, and I was home being able to do all kinds of activities. And when I finally retired, when did I retire? In 1996, I did two things. I joined the Master Gardener program, which is a part of cooperative extension at the university, and became a Master Gardener. And what I did a lot in that program was to answer the telephone calls at the cooperative extension office, Master Gardener program, where people would phone with all of their garden questions. And the other thing I did was join the Historical Society and become a docent. And my activity there is to tour the fourth grade curriculum in Nevada is Nevada. So we get a constant visits from fourth grade classes throughout our schools. And when the kids come to the museum, I tour the youngsters, and my particular area is prehistoric Nevada, Ichthyosaurus, and our Native American population. And we have wonderful artifacts, but I have to keep reminding the children, because when we tend to talk about the Native Americans in Nevada, we talk about them years ago, their early history, and have to keep reminding the young people that come that they're all in Washoe County schools, they're their classmates, they're in businesses here, they're not Native Americans living in teepees and whatever. What do we call them in Nevada? Can't think of the word. We don't call them wigwams and we don't call them teepees. No, that work. It's a totally Nevada language word. I'll think of it in the middle of the night.
Wow. Well, that is a dizzying amount of things that you have done. So what's your next project?
I'm going to go backtracking a bit.
Okay.
For Michael Gordon, because Michael Gordon and I had very, very different Holocaust experiences. Michael, you lived with your grandfather, didn't you? My experience was quite different. Number one, it would have been 1940 or 42, when I was a little girl, the World War was just beginning to happen. What preceded it, not the war itself. And when they were beginning to send young German girls, 12-year-olds, out of Germany to make certain they might have a life ahead of them, for about a year, a young German girl lived with us. And that was a lovely experience to have this young woman, because her life was saved because she was here. Then my other another experience related to World War II. We left, my father was the oldest man drafted. At 37, my father was drafted to go into the US military, and he could have refused or whatever, and nobody would have fought with him. But he thought, oh, that'd be a really interesting experience. I think I'll do that. So he went into the military, and fortunately, they were very kind to him. We lived in Portland, Oregon, and he was just a corporal working in an office. And his first station was in Bend, Oregon. There was a very large military base. Now there's a big resort there outside of Bend. Can't think of what its name is. Sunny something, whatever. Anyway, nevertheless. So his first place was in Bend, Oregon at the camp, and then into Fort Lewis and Seattle. So he had an easy military experience. But my experience, so Bend, Oregon was about maybe a 3-hour bus ride from Portland, Oregon. And if Daddy couldn't come home on the weekend, we went to Bend, Oregon, stayed at a hotel that's still there after all these years, the Pilot Beauty Inn, if you ever get to Bend, Oregon. But we would go to the USO every night while we were there. And my mother and father and sister would go to the movies, and I would play with all the soldiers in the USO. Nobody gave it a second thought. Can you imagine leaving an 8-year-old girl? Life was different when I was a little girl. So anyway, that was my World War II experience with my father in the military.
Wow. Well,
But I have another very important World War II experience.
oh, please.
My husband, if you knew, Harry's family left Germany they were very fortunate. First thing that was happening was my brother-in-law, who regretfully passed away recently, was blonde and blue-eyed. And the Nazi youth wanted him to be a part of the Nazi youth. And so the decision was made, he was not safe in Germany. So he was sent off to Belgium to live with an aunt. And then my father-in-law, who was politically active, probably communist, because that was the party that opposed the Nazis in Germany. Anyway, he wasn't safe anymore in Germany. And fortunately, the family had sufficient funds. They could get themselves out. So they got Harry, his brother, mother, and father, got themselves out. They got up to Norway to get on a ship. You couldn't take money out, but you could take furniture. And if anybody's ever been to my house and seen my grandfather clock, this heavy, heavy wooden grandfather clock, tall, they took a whole household of furniture that they got onto a ship in Norway, through the Panama Canal, up into San Francisco, and settled in Oakland.
Wow.
So that was not like Michael Gordon's experience with the Holocaust.
What year was that?
That would have been, they got here in early 40. But my mother-in-law, a slightly different experience, and some of you may have come when the author Michael Ewell, who wrote a book about her, you remember? Well, I'll tell you briefly. My mother-in-law was from Stuttgart, Germany, and Michael Ewell was walking down the street, and he had planned to write a book about the Spanish Civil War, but as he walked down the street in Stuttgart, he kind of stumbled on one of the stumbling stones, Stolpersteine, that are in front of people's houses in Germany with their name, birth date, and death date. And he decided to skip Spanish Civil War for now. I'm going to write the life history of this woman. So Ilse, my mother-in-law's sister, and Ilse was not Harry's biological mother. She had got to the United States and passed away 6 months later, and father remarried. But anyway, so he wrote the book about her. Ilse's sister was a nurse, and she went to Spain to help against Franco in the Spanish Civil War. And then Franco put all the Jews that were in Spain in Auschwitz, and she ended up in Auschwitz. But there was another piece of that whole thing I was going to tell you, but I'll remember in the middle of the night.
Well, when we bring you back, you'll be able to share all these, have all these ends. Well, I know there's probably some questions that people here have, so we'll give Jill a moment to get the microphone, and I ask, please only speak when you have the microphone, because the folks who are online won't be able to hear you otherwise. So if you have inconsiderate things to mumble, don't do it while you're holding the microphone. But if you have a question, please do it while you're holding the microphone.
You seem like a really polite rabble-rouser. So I would like to know, what is the most trouble you ever got into?
Well, in my life's experience, it was getting TB. You know, I got through all of this without really getting into trouble. And another piece of it, when I was doing all my lobbying for the Equal Rights Amendment, whatever, in Carson City, a couple of attorneys, if you would anyway remember, the law firm Echeverria and Osborne, Pete Echeverria actually was on the gaming board. But anyway, they saw me being able to talk to people, and they thought, oh, you know, men answer questions from women, or people answer questions from women more easily than they answer from men. So I was an investigator in a law firm for a number of years. So I didn't get into trouble, sorry. But I had a very interesting life.
Yeah.
And still I'm having an interesting life.
How I got to know Barbara is we co-chaired a committee to buy the sound system that's in Temple today.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a great pleasure, and it was wonderful working with her to pick out the system both in the sanctuary and in the social hall, which took us maybe 3 months till we found the system, maybe a little bit longer, that we thought was right for Temple. But it was a wonderful experience to me, because I was still fairly new to Temple at that time, and that we got to get to work together, and I had a tremendous amount of respect for Barbara. It was a pleasure.
Among the pleasures of working with Mike Medman, he used to make chocolate chip challah. And I understand, I understand he taught Rabbi Rosen.
So I'm trying to think, Barbara, you were president, was it 2001 to
2000.
3?
Mhm.
So, and I'm just curious, because I don't remember. Do you remember what was going on in the synagogue at those days? Were there any major issues, or I don't remember big controversy or?
No, it was really very quiet years. We were the congregation was growing. I think at some point we had 60 children in our.
Right.
Among many things, my Julie daughter was the director of the religious school at one point.
That would have been about then, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we pushed about 70 at one point.
Right.
So
But they were quiet years.
the second edition was already done by then, because that was in the early 90s. I mean, the first edition.
Yeah, the first
classroom.
edition was done.
So that was done. So we were between building projects.
Mhm.
I was just trying to think if anything, was popping in those days, but
I think we were just adding membership, growing. We were always one of my favorite parts of Temple Sinai, I will say, and you're continuing it. We hold a place in this community. We have made Judaism a known and positive thing in the cities of Reno Sparks. And to me, that whole larger community activity and involvement is a very important part of our congregation.
okay. Well, I'm glad it was calm. See, Barbara caused trouble without ever getting in trouble. I don't know. You and I, Nancy, would never pull that off, but she did.
No, I'm just marveling over an uneventful presidency. I can feel Michael Gordon in the back going, "Why couldn't I have that?"
Hi.
I'm Gail Stern. I just had a question. Has the synagogue always been here on this spot?
No, it was, they built this building in 72, just before I got here. And they didn't have a building. They met in buildings in town. Yeah. And
They met downtown at the Masons Hall,
yeah.
which isn't anymore. But it was down like on 4th, 2nd, somewhere down right there. I think it's right across from where I live now, actually.
Because it was here when
It
I
was
got
there.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't as large when I got here. So we couldn't fit everybody in for the High Holy Days. So we
Right.
used to have the High Holy Days at the Catholic Church.
Yeah, yeah. And Sinai and Emmanuel were one at one point.
Oh,
They were
early.
two, and then they were one, and then they split. So again, there were some various locations at that point. Yeah.
Oh, I think John Louis has a question there.
Well,
Well, one thing that Barbara did was that she brought me onto the board, maybe it was 2001,
oh, yeah.
as secretary. And I've got to credit Barbara with a lot of my professional growth. You're one of my most important mentors, I would say. You showed very capable leadership.
In the nice, quiet years.
Yeah. It was very important for me to see that. So thank you.
All right. Well, I think we may do we have a question from online?
So we do have an online question, comes from Alexa Foley.
Hi, Alexa.
Barbara, was there anything you chose not to do and why?
I'm kind of a go with the flow kind of person. I'm sure along the line, I just quietly didn't do things. But I never made, I don't think Dan, did I ever make an issue out of it? My son is back there.
Just not doing things, saying no.
We had a nice life, have a nice life.
She was a great mom. We had a great time and investigated everything. My parents encouraged us to investigate everything. And that's what stands out the most. They made it, they paved the way for my sisters and I to learn a lot. I don't remember her telling us no, probably about getting a dog once. But we also had owls and turtles and all kinds of other pets. So I think the only thing we weren't allowed to have was a kitten. I don't remember why.
I wanted to ask a question. Barbara, I always think of you regarding social action in all different dynamics, domestically, internationally, Israel. And I never knew that passion may have come from your mom. So what over the years have got you so active? Was it the causes, or was it just the instinct from what you saw in your family, or what motivated you to be so involved?
Well, I would say it was my family that was what I saw, and saw it as a positive. And I have to say, I have found my life very fulfilling, because I was involved in significant things and in ordinary things, and never felt lonely.
And being Jewish in Nevada for so long, what are the changes you've seen? Be it good, bad, indifferent, other than just population? Because it must have been incredible to see 60 children here in school.
I hope all of you have had the same not involvement, experience as I have. And I can be unconscious of things. I have not felt anti-Semitism here. And that's why I just feel that the synagogue out in the community, my friends all know I'm Jewish. They've come here for things. It's just never been a negative.
Even to this day.
Not directly at me and not at me, because it's sure going on in the world.
Hey, Barbara, so nice to hear your life history. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school through college and then married a Jewish boy. And Robert Dickens and I were still friends, although he has Leah now. But both sides of our family couldn't understand that. But my father-in-law, Louis Dickens, was the first president of this congregation. They split from the other temple and came here. And so Robert and I were married in 71, and I became the choir director for a long time with Myra. And it was such a pleasure. But I want to say, even in the early days when we started coming here, we lived in different places getting schooling. I came back here in 79. And I have to say that this congregation was always so accepting. I never felt like it was, you're Jewish or nothing or whatever. But and then my dad passed away very suddenly in 79. And when we came to to the Friday night services, I got more love and from this congregation, and that's why it has a very special place in my heart. My mother-in-law was the first female president, Ruth Dickens, and so the history is wonderful. But still, this has just been such a good community for me. But you mentioned you never felt anti-Semitism. Robert has the story of going to the old Mount Rose School. He was maybe 4th or 5th grade, and one of his classmates, they got into an altercation near their houses, and he called Robert a dirty Jew. And Robert fought him, and the kid broke his nose. So there was some anti-Semitism in Reno. I'm glad that you didn't experience that, but I'm just so proud as a kind of a fallen away Catholic, but I'm just so proud of the history that I've been able to have with such a welcoming, warm community. My little sister, my folks adopted her when I was 20, and they used to bring her here every now and then to serve, or Robert and I would bring her to services, but she loved the food. And no one has said anything about the wonderful food for Friday night services that my sister, she's an agnostic today, but she still remembers coming here for the great food.
The important thing.
That's why I got into this business, for the food.
Maybe you just took it for granted.
So when I was asked by Barbara to be on the rabbinic search committee, where we later hired Rabbi Terry Appleby, I remember that whenever we had a meeting at Barbara's house, she asked us to bring goodies because she has a passion for not cooking. And we always remembered we had to bring something, because Barbara said, I'm opening my house, but I'm not opening my kitchen.
Yes. Somehow cooking has never appealed to me, other than when my kids were younger, challah on Friday. And all my kids are really good cooks.
All right.
Okay. I wanted to remind all of you that our last session for Who Knew will be April 27th. That seems so far from now, but between now and then we have Passover. So kind of things went on a little bit of a hold. That final session for season 1 will be with Daryl Dworkin. And Daryl has a rich history in the toy industry.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to be speaking about the Jewish background of the toy industry.
And much, much more, because he is an interesting character.
Yeah. And he's going to be here April 27th. This coming Friday, we're having what is called Shabbat across America and Canada. And we're going to be celebrating that here with a potluck dinner followed by a service, and then an Onyx sponsored by Jewish Nevada. It's open to the community. And what other event am I missing?
Well, we've got a Purim spiel coming up in about a week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Next Sunday we have the Purim Spiel, which if it's a, how would you describe it? A takeoff, a
It is-
parody?
Yeah, we are parodying Oklahoma
There you
to
go.
retell the story of Esther. It is PG-13, so not necessarily one to bring the kids to. Although if you do, they probably won't get all the jokes. Even I don't get them all. But it is irreverent. It is funny. It is I think something that is kind of unique to Judaism in the way that we take what is a difficult and challenging story and bit of history, and we turn a lot of it on its head and celebrate the good parts and laugh at the hard parts. But we are really excited for it. A number of the folks who are in it are here today, but we've had a lot of fun putting it together. So I hope that you will be able to join us, whether in person or we will also be streaming it. I always say it's always nicer when we have people in person, but you can't throw tomatoes digitally. So assume what you will from that. But truly, it is a really fun event, and something that I think is so different, not only from what you see in the rest of the religious world, but even in Judaism. It is a pretty unique thing. And so if you've never experienced it, please join us for that. It's just one of my favorite things.
May I add, as the piano accompanist for it, which I love to do, Myra Soifer, Rabbi Myra, was the first one to bring in the Purim Spiel. I believe we did it to the music of the Beatles. So normally what we do is we take familiar musicals and we put it to Purim Spiel. This year we're doing it to Oklahoma, but it's Oh Hadassah. So you can't miss it. We've done music to Wicked. We've done music to South Pacific. And it's just such a kick in the pants. And I enjoy being part of that.
We love having you in it.
An X-ray.
I would say it's nice to know that as far as I've gone, I'm still not crossing the line of my forebears. Yes, poor Mike was very confused about what went into Purim from the various things that we've asked him to do over the years.
Just so you can set it aside and save the date, season 2 of Who Knew will kick off September 14th, and we're turning the tables. And this time we're going to get to know Rabbi Benjamin Zober, and he will be having a conversation with our very own Rabbi Myra Soifer. So it'll be Rabbi on Rabbi, and so that'll be September 14th when we kick off Who Knew for season 2. But again, our last session for this year is April 27th, and we do want to thank Jewish Nevada and our board of directors for supporting all of this. Barbara, I can't thank you enough for being with us, being our guest of honor today.
Well,
Rabbi Ben, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for inviting
I
me.
learned so much about you. I had no idea about your mom.
Well, I forgot to tell you guys one thing. I'm going to tell it quick. My experience with the Berlin Wall. My daughter was working in Berlin when the wall, in Munich, when the wall went down, and I was to meet her in Berlin that weekend. So I was riding on the train from Munich to Berlin, and the window shades were up, and all the people on the train were, oh, my goodness, the window shades are up. They've never been up before. And that was when the wall came down, and I even have a piece of it.
Wow.
Then coincidentally, on my 80th birthday, when they were celebrating the, I don't know, whatever year of the Berlin Wall, I was there again in Germany and stood in the huge group of people that were Germans, lined up all along the wall for miles to celebrate. And there I was again that time. So I've had very interesting experiences in my life.
Yeah.
Please join
Thank
us
you.
for some light refreshments. And again, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for coming. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was terrific.